Hello, and welcome to a Learn Masterclass. My name is Sylvia Ceres, and my guest today is Ida Serneberg, a program leader in digital marketing and social media at Noroff School of Technology and Digital Media. Welcome, Ida.
Thank you.
I'm just going to say a few words about this different style of chat that we have started doing in Learn. So traditionally, Learn conversations are about reference cases in innovation, but we have found that our listeners also wish for a little bit more theory. So this is one of the 50 master classes that we are creating, where the intention is to give people just a basic set of concepts, models, and examples in a particular subject that then we have reference cases within. And the topic today, Ida, is digital marketing. Sounds good?
Yes, very good.
Excellent. So, Ida, just tell us very briefly, who are you and what do you do that relates to digital marketing?
Yes, I am the program leader of digital marketing and social media at Noroff School of Technology and Digital Media. And I've been working here teaching the future marketeers digital marketing for the last 3 years. And before that, I was 15 years in the industry working as social media manager for Nordic Choice Hotels and web manager for several big web projects in Sweden. I'm originally from Sweden. I've lived here in Norway for 10 years, but I also have an international background, studied in South Africa and worked in the finance industry in Switzerland. So yeah, that's me.
Very cool, Ida. And I know from social media that you're very proud of your students. You celebrate them and encourage them to go for more. Tell us a little bit about Noroff and in particular your part of it.
Yes, so Noroff is a vocational school, and a vocational school means that what I have to, my responsibility, my social responsibility, the mission that I have from the government is to enable students to go straight to work without any further educational actions. That's actually the law. So what I have to do is, I often say that my program, which is a 1-year program, is a full year of a job application. So it's not about getting a job after school, but I observe school as just as the job world that you need to prepare the students to the future work life. And in our case, we teach a lot of different programs. We have graphic design, and we have 3D design, we have front-end development, we have cybersecurity, and I teach at the digital marketing program, which is, if you're my student, Sylvia, you will most likely end up as a performance marketing specialist or a content producer or even a head of marketing, for instance. So that's what my students do. And as I've said, I've had 4 classes now, and actually 80% of my students, they enter the job market and specifically the digital marketing industry either before exam or right after. So I'm very proud of them. Yes.
They're very, very good. I know from experience. So Ida, tell us what is digital marketing and how is it different from what we traditionally think is marketing?
Yeah, I think it's a really relevant question because in today's world, we put digital as a prefix on everything. And question is, what is digital and what is not digital? So marketing in general, that's a field that goes back to Aristotle. It goes back to the act of persuasion. So if we look at marketing as such, it's about having your intended audience or a potential customer to make an action, for instance, a purchase in accordance to your goals. And then we have put that digital on, and all of a sudden it became so complicated, right? And even right before I talked about performance specialist, we have all these buzzwords in today's marketing world. And I think it's important to think about it in the way that what technology made to marketing is that each step of the process can be you with the support of technology or digital technology. So I often talk about the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps, that's position or placement, price, and let me come back to the third one. But the funny thing is that we often think about digital product. No, it's not product. It's actually, I'm going to be there in a minute. But the funny thing is, no. So that's the classical 4 Ps. So we talk about the 4 Ps. That's also important. So that's good old Kotler. He's one of these guys that you still talk about. He talked about the 4 Ps like place, product, price, and finally, no, it's gosh, I'm so lost. Promotion. And the funny thing is that very often when we talk about marketing, we only talk about promotions, right? If I ask my students, what is digital marketing? They say it's social media ads. In the beginning of the year, I always ask people that. It is advertisement through Google, advertisement online. So we very often think about marketing as advertisement. That is only promotion. So marketing is the whole set of things around it. When we went online, the big major shift is that we can talk about the search corridor. So you can say that you have 2 types of marketing. Either it's inbound, which is you have people searching for something, they have a need, and then your job as a marketeer is to make your company as visible as possible in that search corridor. So that's one thing. And the other one is the interruption. Interruption is rather, back in the days, it was like knocking on the door and coming and selling your Hoover, right? And nowadays, interruption market, that's what pops out. It's the TV ad, commercial TV ad, but it's also what pops up in your feed while you're scrolling, looking for what people just recently did, meaning that you as a product, you are not only competing with other your competitors, you are competing with people's grandma, people's cousins, and so forth. So those are the 2 things. And then back to my P's again. So if we look at placement, for instance, what digital made to marketing is that the placement became digital. You can place an ad you have a whole variety of new types of placement. And when I say placement, it's typical the placement you have in a magazine. It's the last page, right? But it's also then obviously when you go on vg.no, like on a big newspaper, it's what covers all of it, right? But then you also have something called outdoor marketing. Outdoor marketing has increased immensely the last couple of years. And what do we see in outdoor marketing? They've gone from those papers, right, to the
big billboards.
Billboards, right? And they're also digital, right? So that's where you have the placement. Then we have the price. And think about back in the old days, you had that sales management around your magazine, and they were and then they would call different potential customers, and they would say, okay, you want to advertise in our magazine, okay, we can offer you this and that, and maybe if you were advertising for a longer period, you'd get a discount. This whole process nowadays is automatically, right? It's made through the usage of technology, and that gives us a whole variety of new, hard, difficult words that we can predict the price. We can predict the behavior of people, and we can then have a much more smarter algorithmic price model than back in the days. And then there's a 3rd P that I'm not currently cannot think about, but it will pop up in my mind soon.
So basically, digital marketing is placement of or visibility of your products, pushing of your products through the use of technology that's helping you in each of these steps that you mentioned.
Yes.
And technology is making everything in a way more easy for creators and for distributors, but at the same time there is also far more competition. So is the nature of the subject changing? Could you tell us a little bit about the basic history of the subject, and is it harder, is it easier today?
Oh, yeah, that is such a good question, Sylvia. I mean, is it harder or easier? So that's also in my second lesson at digital marketing. I go through that. What is different from old media to new media, or old marketing versus new marketing? And then the students will write different notes, and then you often have very contradictory. It's easier. It's easier to target people. It's easier to target them, and it's easier to reach out. You can reach out to global audience within the next minute, right? Which you couldn't back in the days. So is the nature different? And then someone would say, but it's harder because volume has changed. So you can think about marketing from that perspective, that every day when you open your Facebook feed or your LinkedIn feed, you have among 1,500 to 15,000 messages waiting for you. And you are only going to have a selection of them. The algorithm will decide that selection, what you see in your feed. And you'll only see 80 messages. So my job as a marketer is to become that top 80 in the right audience. So for that matter, it's harder, right? That's one thing. But speed made it easier on the other hand. And reach, so the reach was then all of a sudden higher. But then again, you're reaching everyone and no one. And then we also have that concept of context collapse. Context collapse means that all of a sudden you don't know where your message will show up. And that makes it also harder. And then someone would claim that was always the issue with marketing. You never know where the context collapse is always there. So yes and no. The concepts of marketing is still the same. We just have this technology that made it that amplified parts of it. Yeah.
And what are the most important concepts in your area? What if we are to teach people 5 words that they can use to bluff about digital marketing, what would those 5 words be?
I would talk about the 5 qualities. So to begin with, searchability. So all of a sudden you're searchable. So with the whole idea of a search engine, me as a customer, I can go online and I can start making a lot of research about vacuum cleaners, and then I realized that and then I create needs along the way that I did not even know that I had. So searchability is the number 1. Then you have that constant connectivity, and that creates a whole lot of problems for us. And I think this is the issue that is being addressed more and more. That constant connectivity means that I can reach out to my customers 24/7. They can reach me, and that requires that we are online 24/7. But now we see a shift in that. We see that shift that no, we don't want to be online all the time. But constant connectivity creates a lot of what if your client posts something about you on Twitter at 11 o'clock in the evening and you don't see it because that's outside your opening hours, and when you wake up in the morning 9 o'clock next day, then all of a sudden you have a big PR problem. So that's another thing. Persistency is also important. What comes online stays online. So here you see that your reputation, working with And again, going back to good old Kotler and its 4 Ps. And if we say that, okay, it's only advertising, that's what marketing is, that's promotion. And Kotler actually said now in his late years, Kotler is this professor in marketing, he's over 90 years old and he's still active. And he says that there is too much 1P marketing of today's world, but marketing is also about your product, about what you can offer the people. And if it's not a good product, well, then on internet will tell you so. So that's the persistency that you need to be much more, you have to think about the whole marketing as a whole. The whole organization, everyone in your company is a marketeer. So that's the third one. And then the fourth one is scalability. Scalability is what I've already touched upon. It's the fact that you can reach a global audience in one click. And you can reach an audience that wasn't the intended one. So I remember that the government in the Netherlands, they had a fantastic, they created a fantastic websites where they wanted to easily get access to the demography of the Netherlands. And you could just walk into your area and that it popped up like a really nice graph on this is the demographic in your neighborhood. This is the average age. These are people live most single households, and then also how many immigrants and from where they came. And then someone picked that up from a right-wing party or a right-wing, even extreme rights, and they used it against the purpose. They used it to show, look how our country is, where it's going, and so forth. So there you see that sometimes you have a message and then it will be misused, and it's so much easier in today's world to have misinformation. And there we have all this, the concept of fake news and so forth. Yeah, that's the fourth one. Yeah.
We talked about replicability and scalability.
And searchability.
And searchability and constant connectivity.
Correct.
And persistence.
Yes.
So there are pros and cons, but really there is no alternative. I mean, we cannot undo the digital. So if you are to advise, what should we be most careful about, and what does a successful implementation look like?
Yeah, really good question. So if we go back to 2004, I think that's a really important year. So let me give you a little bit of a brief history of not of digital marketing, but of maybe rather social media, which is really essential in this universe. So in 2004, in that fall, there was a huge conference in California, and it was called the Web 2.0 conference. And that was where that concept was coined, Web 2.0, the social aspect of the internet. It was actually the code HTML5 was invented that time. And then a few months later, there was a little web page being created, and it was called YouTube. And YouTube, it marks the shift of the Web 2.0. Until that time, the internet was kind of a static. You had information there. You had some forums where you were maybe sharing things. But then in 2004, we saw that those big companies coming up, Facebook, for instance, YouTube, and so forth. So that was the Web 2.0. And then fast forward a few years until 2013, or actually 2012, marks a shift in the history of Facebook. That's the year when we go from the feed is invented. And the feed is one of the most important invention in Facebook history. Up until then, you did not have your own feed. meaning, and that's why if you go back on your Facebook page, Sylvia, and you get memories, and it's like, it doesn't make sense, and you're writing to, hi Ida, what are you doing? And you were writing messages back and forth back then, because we did not have that feed. We went into the profile of each person, and we didn't really understand that other people can see this. That's the scalability again. And 2013, then the feed came, and the feed made it possible to commercialize. That's the year when we started, the commercial aspect of the internet came, and especially of social media, where you started with programmatic ads. To a larger extent, you could start target very like in a very diligent and intelligent way in 2013. And then
basically the idea is that you could program your ads to go to a particular group by age, by sex, by place, by location, etc.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also the era when the awareness of, or I mean, the usage of cookies, the fact that when you enter a web page, any web page, what you then you leave traces, you leave information about you, and this is being used in marketing or for marketing purposes. And this created a slight awareness about the fact that, okay, what about privacy? So in 2018 in June, and that's the year when we got the GDPR. I mean, it was a process of many years, and it started about around 2015. They started to work with it. And GDPR was a call out to our industry, where EU said, every time you enter a web page, you broadcast your identity, your personal information to the rest of the world. Hey, marketing industry, you need to do something. And that, to me, marks the shift in the next one, Web 4.0. And if you Google that, you'll find a lot of, okay, what is Web 4.0 going to be like? Web 4.0 is the year and the era of the regulations. It is I would call the ethical aspect of the internet. There is going to be a massive change next year with cookies. So Google is phasing out their cookies. We talk about the cookie death. Meaning that it's not going to be that simple anymore to just target people just like that. And we will see that in the years to come. I always say to my students that the regulations that you need to know, they're not even invented yet. So there are going to be a lot of regulations. And I think as a marketeer, one of the core skills you need to know these days are to be updated on regulations. And it's also, I think it's so interesting because what we will see next year, because I mean, we will always have the need to market ourselves, to make ourselves visible. And everyone is asking me, okay, so what's this world going to be like? I have a very dear cousin who works with these types of issues in Stockholm. And she always says, next year, we will have a new internet. And that sounds very dramatic, right? Oh, I mean, that's not, it's an exaggeration, I would say. But still, what we will see next year is that we will have first-party data. We will work with the login function on our web pages, like you and LearnTech do. You know, you'll have your own, we call it walled garden. That's a $100 word. Walled garden, that's your own kind of, that's your platform or your web page, and you own the data. You have the right to talk to your customers in that secure garden. And that's going to be the future marketing. And that's why I believe that we as marketers, we need to work a lot with creating a secure platform. Like back in the days, you know your customers, you know who's going to, you're that owner of the corner shop, and you know that every morning at 9, Sylvia comes and pick up her bread, and every day at 12, Linda comes and buys her lunch, for instance.
I think this is super interesting. I have to just ask you for a couple of explanations, Ida. So one of them has to do with knowing the regulation, also perhaps knowing the algorithm. I remember there was a no end to discussions about, how does Google do this or that? How does Facebook actually? Nobody wants to say, oh, it's terrible. But on the other hand, what you saw is that as soon as you published information about, let's say, how the search engine optimization works, people would look for tricks, invisible text, especially text related to pornography or, as hidden ads or, and my take on that is that I always thought that, if you can't make your content compete on its own strength, then you might as well not do this at all. So rather than looking for dirty tricks or, finding holes in the regulation in the future as well, I believe that we should make sure that we have the product and that we have good enough content for the placement. What do you think?
Yes. So one of the main foundations in marketing is that you always have an objective, you always have a placement, and then you have a creative. Those are the three fundaments, and you kind of find that even in rhetorics. So this is old theory, and very often the tricks are to be found in the placement. It's about, okay, how can I hack the algorithm? How can I make sure I'm the top one on these search results? How can I understand the algorithm so that I know exactly what to should just be the best. But what we know is that 80% of all marketing activities, they fail on their creatives. Creatives is the content, like you're talking about. That's where you have the gold. You cannot trick yourself out of that. And most of the most typical questions people ask me is there what's the best time to post? Well, it's a question I cannot answer. There is no such thing as time. Again, we have the algorithm, but still, if your story is worth sharing, and if there's this wow effect to it, that's what matters, not time. So I really believe so too, that what we need to create is, yes, we need marketers who know the regulations. We need to know some technology, understand technology good enough to be able to at least hire the right people to create that platform that I talked about. But finally, we need storytellers. We need good storytellers.
And so we in Learn believe in basically marketing of knowledge and innovation through stories. What I find is that there is a somewhat lacking respect out there for good content creation. And I just want to hear you on that, because there is also this belief that, soon AI is going to be just basically scraping off other contents and creating our own automatically created content. But, somebody has to give some text seed to the machine. Somebody actually needs to create some new content and has some new ideas in order for the whole automated machinery of, if you wish, robot journalists or programmatic ads or everything else to work. And so, how do you inspire people to create good content? How do you inspire them to experiment with the different content creation platforms? I'm really looking for somebody that will help us make a TikTok for every good case that we have in our library. And, some people are too young and simply don't care for the topic. And the people who care for the topic don't dare to touch TikTok. And so, how do you boost that content creativity?
Oh, that's one of my favorite challenges. I think about it often, because that's really what makes the outstanding marketeer an outstanding marketeer. There are a lot of things here to take up on. So to begin with, what can machines do in terms of, I've heard about and I've read about also even, some of the storytellers that we have in our societies, like you said, journalists, but also priests. And I heard someone was creating this, okay, what if we have an AI that creates the preaching for each Sunday, and that's totally possible actually. And then we stand with this idea: okay, what can humans do? But I mean, in terms of creating novelty, that requires human intelligence. Novelty is to create something new. And new requires that you use your senses. So what I try to do is that I create all these kinds of activities where we share stories using all our senses, tactile, and not only visually. I mean, it's a very visual culture that we have right now, but I mean, as we've known from this pandemic, we also need touch. And we need the tactile. So that's one thing. Secondly, it's also about inspiration. It's really about, I try to encourage my students to read a lot, read many different things. But at the end of the day, observation, what we use with our human eyes, that's also incredibly important. And how we smell the world. Those are the things that, I mean, the robots of today cannot be that, they cannot connect the dots. So activities that we have to work on is really about connecting the dots. Then secondly, you're also into that, okay, TikTok. So what we need to know is that we have to understand and explore the different functions of each medium. So you have a variety of possibilities in TikTok that you don't have in this, for instance, this podcast medium. So then you'll need to go out and explore. You need to look at and observe, how are people using that TikTok? And secondly, how can we use those functions in a relevant way? And that's really exciting, because every time there is a new medium, there are a whole bunch of functions connected to it. So what I encourage everyone to do is to go out, explore. With that said, everyone does not have to be on TikTok, but we need to at least explore the possibility. So another one is obviously these days is Clubhouse. Clubhouse is really, I mean, linear to begin with. You need to meet up at a certain point. It's kind of like the instant connectivity, a response to that. Okay, it's not instant connectivity. You actually need to meet at a certain time. And then it's also about, again, back to the near and the dear ones. It's a closer, and it's affinity based. It's based on interest. You can go out and find people who are also into knowledge and technology and found those peers. So explore is the answer.
I'm fascinated by, how very often we create technologies for a particular idea or purpose, and they end up solving a different problem. And it's, the people who understand that hidden value or hidden problem that they actually solve. So there is a story about a messaging, SMS, that, was created without much expectations, but it actually managed to create this very low requirement connectivity solution for people, independent on, the quality of their networks, for example, almost independent. And I'm fascinated, for example, by Clubhouse. It went up as a rocket. It sort of came down now.
Yeah.
But I really miss I don't miss the hype, but I miss the service. I very much enjoyed having Clubhouse events because of the possibility to pull the audience up on the stage and give them some real participation opportunity. I mean, sure, they can use a chat function in a conference, but that might not be seen by most people. Here they are on the stage and they actively participate. And I love that. So I think that many of these media, like TikTok with its filters, it creates a new medium, it creates a new format, and it takes time for us to figure out the real value of that new format. It is the people who manage to combine all these formats that are going to get to something really interesting over time. But basically, if I summarize, if I make a bumper sticker of what you were talking about now in terms of successful implementations, what I hear you say is focus on the creative, make sure that you know the technicalities of the placement, create a realistic, ambitious objective, and then go creative, basically. Don't stop. And when we came to pitfalls, you were saying that it takes a lot of work, but also that it might be too much data.
Yeah. So, and I couldn't have said it better. I mean, I really like your sticker there. It's really well said. And one thing that I notice is that we get very caught up in data in today's world, and we end up having too much data. And at the same time, I have so many of my students saying, well, the clients that we work with, the companies that we work with, they don't have data. And that's very often not the case. It's they often don't have structured their data good enough, but also we are just overwhelmed by this data, and then we all start to measure very irrelevant things like likes, clicks, and so forth. But what we should measure is over a long period. So when you have a campaign and an activity, even though that activity only lasts for a month, you should look at and be attentive to the consequences for a long time. I also find it very important to address that creating content is time consuming. I think you in Learn knows very well that creating good qualitative content requires much more time than what people think. So invest in time when it comes to content.
It's time well spent, and there are no real shortcuts, I think. You mentioned 3 examples to me, and I'd like you to basically just explain them to us. You talked about the marshmallow concept, live in Fortnite, then Ariamatuson and their neighborhood or neighbors story, and Scam, the show.
Yes.
Why do you like them?
So really, I guess I took very odd examples, but it was kind of what pops into my head. But to begin with, marshmallow gaming. The gaming industry is one of the most undervalued possibilities that we have in marketing. Think about how many gamers we have. The gaming industry is not only for the kids, it's for everyone. I'm sure that everyone listening have some sort of distraction app on our iPhone, what we're doing when we just need to relax. I mean, gamification is such a big part of our today's world. And Fortnite is one of these it's probably one of the biggest games that we have, one of the most money-making games. And it's Epic Games is the company behind Fortnite. They had a few years ago, and I know this because my nephew talks about it. I don't play Fortnite, but I listen, and that's also one of my number 1 tips. Ask your kids, try to follow them. And my nephew William, he's a big fan of Fortnite, and so Marshmallow is a band, and they had their live concert. The first live concert was within the game. And that's really something that we'll see. The marketing is going to be, it's already implemented in the gaming industry, but it's going to be in a very sophisticated way in the years to come. And this is one of the examples that I always take in the beginning of the year, because it's so fascinating. Go Google that Marshmallow concert on YouTube. I think it's 25 million views. So that's one of the examples. Then Ariamatuson, that's a little bit more maybe known to us. I mean, Ariamatuson is probably one of the strongest brands that we have in the Norwegian market. If we go to their YouTube channel, you will see that they have this series about this man and the neighbor, and they have that slogan about the simple life is always the best life. It's
the one where he's had a tooth operation and he can't unlock his door because his voice recognition doesn't work. Yeah.
And I really would love to know how Ariamatuson came. One thing is how they came up with the idea, but I'm sure that they just created that one-shot advertisement, and it evolved into this series. And seriality, that's also something that I haven't talked about, but seriality is a really big thing in marketing. Not only like Netflix, but creating a story that continues over time and over channels even. So that's why that's a really good example. Scam. Why am I picking something like Scam? Scam is not, you would say, it's not a marketing activity to begin with. It's a series. But in Scam, you have all the components of what I mean is a successful marketing campaign. To begin with, they started with gathering data. They asked 16-year-olds, what would be themes that you would be interested in? They really understood their audience before they created the content. Then they create this piece of content, and it lives on multiple channels at the same time. So you can walk into their Instagram stories while you're watching the play. You can look at, there's a whole web page about it. And then they're also sending everything. It was broadcasted at the time. It was like a real time. It really felt real. So if the show was happening at 12:08, that's also the time when they published it. And then you had a fan base created around it, and a fan base that was broader than the intended one. Broader than just young ones. I mean, we were quite old, the ones that was really following it. So there you see the scalability again. And I think it's massively interesting that the last words of the Scam series is from the feed. It's from the chat. And it was like, all we need is love. And that's not from the series. It's not from the production. It is from one of the fans. And that's how they decide to end the whole, they end with the audience. And I think there you have an interactive audience as well, which is also a really key component in this world. I feel like I'm adding these key components all the time, but yeah.
But I think it's a really good way of adding them as well, because we look at concrete examples that most of us have some, some associations with, and then we can steal good ideas and try to see if we can translate them to our needs in digital marketing. And that brings me basically to the final questions, Ida, and it's about, where do I go to become a better marketeer? And you have recommended, you say that many books, you read 50 books only this spring, but you recommend the Flow book, the Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. Both of those have been mentioned previously in the series, but say very briefly what they are. And I'd like you to go a little bit more into digital minimalism before we end.
Oh, yeah. So to begin with, your first question, I mean, where do you seek out information? LearnTech is a good example of our today's world and how you can always learn new things. So I think you should have some go-to spots like that. You can always apply for a year, obviously, in my class. But other than that, there are so many certificates. We have HubSpot. It's a fantastic, it's actually a tool, but they also have a fantastic resource where you can go and seek on content marketing, and you can even take certificates. That's really good. So all those kind of LearnTech friends, that's really today's, that's how we're on this lifelong journey of learning, right? And then I find it so hard to say what you should read, because that's also, I really want to get to know my audience, if it's my students or whoever, and okay, what's your interest, and try to start with reading things that you really enjoy. But then I have those go-to books, these 3 go-to books that I say, okay, well, if you really need to just have some, I don't know, those are
basis.
Basics, yes. So to begin with, Kahneman, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. There is a scientific article by Kahneman and Tversky, 1979. It marks the shift of how we think about human behavior. And it's so basic, understanding the system A and system B, how we think fast and slow at the same time, having a sense of understanding that as a marketeer, that we need to talk to the whole brain when we talk to people. And it's very, very often cited. So Kahneman is, if you've read that, then you will bump into him everywhere. And I'm a such fan of Kahneman and Tversky that I've read mostly everything about them. There's also another book, The Undoing Project, and it's about their friendship, about Daniel Kahneman and this Amos Tversky, those psychologists that really changed how we think and understand human decision making, which is at the end of the day what we want to do as marketeers. We want to have people change their behavior in some way or another. So that's why I always say that that's a go-to book. The same with Flow. Flow is Csikszentmihalyi. Csikszentmihalyi is also a psychologist. So both these books are psychology in the bottom. It's also a book that is widely cited, and it's really to understand the concept of creativity. Where does creativity come from, and how can I reach that stage of flow into my life? And that's why I find that a really good book. And then I have my favorite author called Cal Newport. Cal Newport wrote this book in 2019 called Digital Minimalism, and it's really about the black sides of marketing and digital media in general, and I just find that an important read.
Very good, Ida. I will actually go and read Digital Minimalism. I haven't read it, and I keep thinking, I think both I and whole of my team needs to do it, because I think we get kind of lost into details, and creativity untamed is also a very dangerous thing. So it's, I guess, the discipline of focusing or the courage of prioritizing that we need to bring back into many of our creative processes. We've been through the basic concepts of digital marketing. We have talked through 3 really good examples, and we have also talked about, further reading and some pitfalls. I think that people can look up both your course and other content from Learn as examples. And I'm hoping actually that we're going to work with your students on testing out some more of these new modularities of content creation, but also perhaps content distribution.
Yeah,
Ida,
for sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.